Hey ladies, I'm thrilled to be with you today to talk about cultivating our feminine essence. As women, our warmth, grace, and beauty have the power to inspire and influence others in incredible ways that men simply can't. There's such quiet strength in that, which people unfortunately tend to overlook. But if you want to cultivate a peaceful environment and instill a sense of tranquility in those around you, where they feel fully loved and cared for simply because of the gentle, feminine energy you exude, then keep listening. I will show you how to be soft and unlock your feminine energy. Number 1, the essence of softness. Personally, I've had quite a few girlfriends confide that they're frustrated with the hardness they project. Whether they're rude, impatient, negative, bossy, or controlling, they've realized that kind of hard, jagged energy creates disharmony in relationships. Breaking out of that pattern and cultivating softness can be tough, but it's so rewarding. So what do I mean when I say softness? Well, softness is naturally the opposite of hardness. Think about the qualities that oppose those of hardness. What's something hard? A rock. What qualities does a rock fundamentally lack? It isn't yielding. It doesn't give, it isn't flexible, it isn't tender. If I dropped a rock on my foot, it certainly wouldn't receive my foot with a gentle caress. A rock isn't vulnerable or delicate, it's quite the opposite. Femininity is strength through softness. Softness effortlessly disarms people. It enchants and invites them to relax their guard because there's no need to be defensive around soft, feminine energy. The irony is that when we allow ourselves to be softer physically and mentally, we access incredible strength. Through our softness, we can ignite tremendously positive change in relationships and the world. Number 2, authenticity over perception. Now, before I go any further, I want to offer an important disclaimer about femininity. Choosing to embrace feminine qualities doesn't mean you should tolerate anything harmful or dangerous. Prioritizing the appearance of femininity over its true essence will lead to disaster every time, causing us to lose the very thing we wish to embody. I've unfortunately met young women who suppress traits they view as masculine, like assertiveness and competitiveness when it comes to setting boundaries. They put themselves in compromising situations because they're afraid of seeming unfeminine. That's not okay. The point is that we shouldn't get so attached to seeming feminine that we tolerate anything unethical. Femininity isn't about appearances or playing a role, it's your authentic way of being as a woman. All right, that concludes this disclaimer. I hope you find value in this perspective on cultivating our feminine essence. Let's dive in, starting with the quality of gentleness. Number 3, the gift of gentleness. Gentleness has been losing its positive connotation in our culture, especially for women. It's been replaced with pressure to be more fierce, domineering, and aggressive. And while I'm all for equal respect between men and women, I don't like the push for homogeneity. Women and men aren't interchangeable, but difference doesn't have to mean discord. There's room for harmony even with contrast. Gentleness describes the energy you project and how you approach relationships. It's how little girls handle their baby dolls, with soft caresses and sweet affection. It's how skillful mothers console, soothe, and even discipline their children. But being gentle doesn't necessitate being a pushover. It describes how you express yourself, not whether you express yourself. You can be gentle while still being opinionated and maintaining boundaries. For instance, before focusing on my feminine development, I wouldn't reflect much before taking control in group settings. I'd just sort of dive in and take charge without considering others. But now I try to pause and get input before moving forward. Often I receive great advice that totally reshapes my approach in a way that benefits everyone. I learn how to lead without disturbing others, and can even bring my team joy with simple accommodations. Even in small ways, taking others into consideration before acting dramatically softens your impact. Something as simple as asking permission demonstrates care. May I open the blinds?
May I listen to music for a bit?
Of course, it's not necessary to ask about everything. But when what you're about to do may infringe on those around you, checking in shows you want them to feel comfortable and cared for. If you've enjoyed this perspective so far, I'd be honored if you subscribed to my channel. Join me on this journey of self-discovery as women. Together, we can uplift each other and our world through the power of feminine love. Number 4, the vulnerability of authenticity. Cultivating authenticity through vulnerability is also essential for softness. As an unknown quote goes, vulnerability opens us to our shared humanity, building connection and wholeness rather than reinforcing separation. Vulnerability means choosing to show up honestly and be real, even when it's uncomfortable. There's something magnetic about a woman who isn't afraid to gracefully express her true feelings and emotions. Vulnerability has been culturally framed as weakness, but it's actually a profound source of feminine strength. I've seen old advice telling women to restrict emotional range in order to seem pleasant and accommodating. But that kind of inauthenticity is draining. As I said earlier, true femininity isn't about chasing perceptions. If your sole focus is on seeming feminine, you end up disconnected from your core as a woman. To genuinely embrace your feminine essence, you must be real. Vulnerability provides that doorway to authenticity. Being vulnerable means being raw, open, and unguarded with your heart, willing to let people see you clearly even if it means getting hurt. It's about accepting things as they are rather than how you wish they were. That kind of radical honesty holds power to spark positive change. By unflinchingly acknowledging reality, we can effectively improve life circumstances. There's incredible softness in allowing yourself to be vulnerable. You relinquish whatever jagged edges you hide behind for self-protection. Although vulnerability brings the risk of pain, it's the only way to form real intimate connections. When you're authentically vulnerable with people, you create space for them to reciprocate. They can lower their own shields knowing you won't attack their exposed spots. A few notes on healthy boundaries with vulnerability. It doesn't mean sharing your inner world with everyone. Discretion in what you reveal is wise. Bearing your full self only with a trusted few keeps you anchored, not closed off. Appropriate vulnerability also depends on context. It isn't always suitable. You can share truthfully without excessive detail. For example, "I'm having a tough day," instead of pretending everything's fine. The right amount of transparency projects authenticity, while oversharing can seem disingenuous. Number 5, flexibility cultivates harmony. Flexibility and cooperativeness are other hallmarks of feminine softness. One of a woman's great powers is her desire for peace, harmony, and unity. This orientation stems partly from the fact that the feminine thrives in safe conditions. It's easier to relax your guard when you feel protected and cared for. A soft woman avoids rigidity when plans change or things get inconvenient. She doesn't demand her own way just to satisfy her ego. She understands that to create an environment of flow and tranquility, sometimes you need to bend, adjust to shifts with patience and understanding. For tension to dissolve, someone often has to surrender their immediate preferences for the sake of the group's cohesion and comfort. Conflict typically involves people clinging rigidly to what they want. So, being the one to bend neutralizes friction and facilitates cooperation. When delays or obstacles arise, a feminine response is to modify expectations, avoid criticism, and refrain from applying more pressure. A soft woman bends, she does not break. This flexibility demonstrates compassion for the needs of others. Of course, maintaining harmony requires sacrifice at times. You may need to regularly forfeit some personal desires to prevent turmoil and assist others. This is challenging but profoundly transformative, clearing the path for the tranquil climate you crave. It's also fascinating that research shows women tend to be more physically flexible than men because of differences in connective tissue. So it makes sense flexibility emerges as a distinctly feminine quality. Number 6, managing inner criticism. As women, many of us struggle with overthinking and excessive inner criticism. Women naturally have higher neuroticism, making us extra sensitive to stress and potential threats. Personally, I'm inclined to ruminate and dwell in negative thought patterns, so I overanalyze everything and often catastrophize situations in my mind. When you're relentlessly hard on yourself, lose hope, and constantly expect the worst, you instinctively harden as a form of self-protection. And while that may occasionally help you endure, it ultimately inhibits softness. The reality is that life involves pain. Trying to eliminate discomfort entirely is both futile and destructive. It's far better to seek meaning amidst the ups and downs. Challenges prompt growth, even if difficult in the moment. While some suffering is inevitable, we don't need to be anxiety-ridden victims of circumstance either. It's impossible to relax into feminine receptivity when consumed by dread. Throughout the day, I try to catch myself when my mind spirals into overthinking and envisioning worst-case scenarios. I gently remind myself of my tendency to fixate on the negative. Then I try to examine whether this anxiety has a real purpose or is an unnecessary result of my nervous system's hypervigilance. I ask myself, is this productive stress or unproductive stress? Is there a genuine threat, or am I getting worked up over nothing? Usually there's no legitimate danger, it's just my neurotic proclivity flaring up. Simply recognizing anxious thoughts as excessive reactions helps me gain perspective. Of course, we shouldn't ignore real issues requiring attention. But by acknowledging our nervous system's negativity bias, we can consciously soften our inner tone and respond more calmly when stress exceeds the actual situation. In closing, ladies, I hope these perspectives on cultivating our feminine essence have been insightful. Although we face many cultural pressures that can harden us, remembering that true power stems from softness, not force, is liberating.